Hey, it's Andrew here from Home Theatre Engineering, and today I have Claver Harper from National AV Solutions. Hey, Claver, how are you, mate? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Andrew. Long time.
So we've had a fairly long relationship with Claver, but Claver has especially been instrumental in helping us elevate the craft, I guess. And finally, Claver's been able to fly over and join us here. And he's seen our showrooms for the first time ever.
First time ever, yes.
So,
and,
which was great.
yeah.
What we wanted to talk to you today about is, and we think it's something that sort of gets lost a bit, is the fine art of cinema. And so we'll have a chat with you about that.
Yeah. Look, it's great to be here, Andrew, and I must say, the cinema is beyond my wildest expectations.
Oh, the showroom here?
Yeah, the showroom here. You know, the private cinema, the private art gallery.
Yeah,
maybe that's what we should call it.
absolutely.
Because it's at a level, it's beyond the level of most home cinemas, definitely. You know, so it's at that level that I think really any Hollywood movie director would be more than happy to sit in that room and watch their movies. You know.
It's been an interesting journey, and what I've noticed is in that room, when people sit and listen to it, that they become very emotional.
Yes.
I think that, you know, what we talked about, you know, yesterday was that also the experience of hearing and seeing detail that you either haven't heard before or rarely get to hear. You've had the privilege of sitting in some of the best rooms in the world.
Yeah.
But you made a comment about cinema being fine art, and that's really what I think we want to focus on here.
Yeah, well, I think people forget that that motion pictures are an art form, and they're a high art form. You know, often when we think of art, you know, we obviously think of pictures. You know, we think of artists, painters, Picasso, you know, Van Gogh, whatever, and we understand that. We think of sculptures, and we go to museums and pay money to see those art forms, and you know, and those pieces of art, you know, as people know, can be anywhere from a couple of $100,000 to
multiple millions,
tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, and then of course we have dance, you know, and we have, you know, the ballet, we have opera, and we have theatre, live theatre, you know, and of course we have music.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, music is such an important part of all art, you know, including rock bands and orchestral, you know, music and classical music. And I think for some very strange reason, I think because of the commoditization of you know, TV and movies now with all our streaming services, maybe we've forgotten that this is this
art for granted.
We take this art for granted. You know.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And the interesting thing is, people will travel. Is, you know, you hit a chord with me just then. People will go to a museum to see, I don't know about touch, but to see and experience the original art up close. And I think that's what I really want to talk about here, is that the fact that we are so privileged to have this art, and B, how we should experience it.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, right? In my hand, I've got a UHD disc. You know, depending on currencies and stuff, probably looking at about $30.
Yeah.
This disc, this is June. I don't know the dollars and cents, but probably what, $300 million?
300 million US dollars to make that film.
Massive amount of investment. And if you've ever looked at the credits, thousands of people, and people slaving over details, both in picture and sound. And you know, one of the interesting things is that there is so much information locked up in this disc that most of us never experience. If you're watching this on a TV with a soundbar or in stereo, you are only experiencing what I would consider to be more of the cover of the art, as opposed to everything that's in here. And I can promise you there's detail in here that, you know, if you know how to extract it, is phenomenal. Right? And you know, when you sat in our room the other day and I sort of looked at your face and you were experiencing the sounds and the details, and I think your comment was the clarity and detail was what you spoke about.
And when you hear soundtracks that suddenly you know, just become so alive and so intimate, it's goosebump stuff. You know, it really is goosebump stuff. You know, And that's the emotional connection, because we get an emotional connection to art. People go to the ballet and cry. People go to the opera and cry. People go to movies and cry, or get very happy. So that's what art does to us. It creates an emotional connection and a physical whatever that is, it's something that sort of happens, it's real.
And I think you're right, because we are now literally drip fed, the highest form of this art, but through streaming platforms like Netflix, etc., where it's just on call. We can watch one after the other. It just gets poured into our heads. But what we don't realize, we're watching this flat image. We're watching often sort of 1 or 2 dimensional sound. But there is, I can promise you, there's so much more. And that's why in this room, it's invitation only, make an appointment, come and listen. But when you hear what's on this disc, when you truly know what's gone into this art, and I kind of feel sorry for you. Imagine being, the audio engineers here, you slave over details. We were talking about some of the ambience and the effect sounds that have been driven to particular speakers to get a certain effect. And if you are just watching it in stereo, you don't get that, which is why we go to such great lengths to design a room to try and deliver as much of this art as possible.
Yeah.
And, for people who don't know, Clave is responsible in Australia for delivering the product to us that makes this achievable. And if you don't have the right speakers and you don't have the right projectors and you don't have the right screens, then you can't deliver this.
No, exactly. And also, I get told a lot as we go around, obviously, we love cinema and we build cinemas and we sell cinema product. And often now I'm finding with the big TVs that are coming out, people go, it must be hard to sell projection, or projection's going away because the TVs are getting bigger. And that's just not true because, when you have a $300 million piece of artwork on a disc, nothing displays this better than a true cinema situation. The wide scope screen, the high quality projection, the immersive sound, high quality amplifiers, that all pieces together to present the artwork, at its absolute best. And I don't think that's going to go away. It really isn't. TVs are not going to replace that. I'm happy to say.
And interestingly enough, even though some cinemas can be expensive to put in your room, they're a fraction of the price of owning a masterpiece.
Oh, absolutely.
So in terms of value, that's definitely there. I think those elements are critical, and it doesn't really matter what your budget is, but just be aware that the closer you can get to delivering a cinema-like experience, the more of this you are going to experience. And when you start to unlock what's really on this disc, then that's truly something else.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So I guess then the question becomes, what are the elements that you need? You talked about projectors and speakers, but I think the room needs to be correct. You need to be in the right seating position. We need the right screen size and type. One of the things that struck me, so the room that we're talking about has a Barco Freya projector in it, and that image, it's, you walk in the door and it immediately catches your eye, but the colours, we watched Greatest Showman as a
Greatest Showman. I know I've seen that clip many times, on other projectors, and I'll even say other Barco projectors of lesser, than the Freya. But what we experienced yesterday was just something again. It's I even get goosebumps thinking about it now. Like then when you see that in the image, you start to understand the craft.
Yes.
That the director and the DOP, the director of photography, are putting together for you.
Yep.
It's just a feast for your eyes. And I just saw stuff in that opening scene that I was illuminated to.
and then you commented about the sound too. And I think this is the thing. One of the joys of doing what I do is we are constantly elevated. 2-3 years ago, I would say, I don't know, it's hard to put a date on it, but 4 or 5 years ago, home cinema suddenly started to meet and then exceed commercial cinema.
Yes,
you know.
yeah.
And one of the joys for me is watching this elevation where, you know, if you think back to projectors of 15, 20 years ago, well, they were kind of pretty average, right?
Yeah.
They were the best we could do. Now, what you can put in a home cinema is gobsmacking, and the ability to now produce dynamic range, color, contrast, and all those things that you would either get or exceed in a commercial cinema, we can do in a home.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
You know, the other thing is nostalgia, right? I think I've mentioned this in a couple of videos, but you know, my memories of cinema were my father taking me to my first movie. Now, I was a young guy, and I think the first one he took me to was 2001: A Space Odyssey, which obviously I didn't understand at that age,
Right.
but it was a spectacular film, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I remember, you know, people were smoking in cinemas then, and you had this beam of light going through the cinema, and this amazing screen and this incredible sound, and that has I don't know if it's a romantic impact on me, and that's one of the reasons that I like cinema, you know, because you've got that light behind you beaming across the room. It, to me, there's an emotional impact just being in a cinema.
Yes.
And look, we've investigated like LED video walls and things, but the other thing is you can only get so much light in a room, in a dark room. And we are approaching that limit now, because the more light you put in a room, the more light falls back on the screen and things like that. And some of these video walls are so bright and they're hard. The other thing too is these are filmed, these are created to be shown in cinemas. They're created to be shown in a reflective medium. And one of the things that I've talked about is life is what we see is reflective. If you see a car or a dog or a cat or a house, the color and the image that we see is reflected light. The sun bounces off it, comes back, that's what we see. That's what happens in a projected cinema. On TV, it's emanated light. It's like, you know, if your cat and your car and your house could illuminate and shine at you, that's what we're seeing in TV, and that's why TV has a harshness that projectors don't have.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why we're also more connected to that projected image. That's my personal feeling.
Yeah, look, and I agree with all of that, and I also feel like, you know, cinema, like whether it be a commercial cinema or a high-end home cinema or a private cinema, as we'd like to call them these days, when you get up to a certain level, it goes back. It's almost like the vinyl thing with music. You know, the people are going back to vinyl, and vinyl is sort of having this huge resurgence around the world. And I think, like, because of the analog thing, we're analog beings, and I think we relate to analog things. And I feel like cinema gives you that analog feel. You know, the picture just looks more natural. It, you know, and everything about it just feels right. You know, and often when you're watching things on TV, you can go, oh, that's a good image. But then after you sit there for, you know, 30, 40 minutes, it's like...
You get that kind of, whatever feel.
You know. But then you go and watch something on a, you know, 130, 140, 180 inch cinema screen, you know, with a projector. There's just a whole different vibe about that, you know. And I think, you know, just as human beings, I think that's just, we prefer that whole look, you know, and that whole feel and the nice vibes it gives us, you know.
I think the other thing is that, you know, I wanted to thank Claver as well, because what Claver's done for us is not only does he help supply us a lot of the equipment, but he also connects us with the companies that matter. So, for example, the relationship with Claver extends way past Claver to the folks at Barco Residential, or with Wisdom, or with, you know, SI Screens, or, you know, and so on. And so, I want to thank you for that.
No, pleasure. We want to...
So the good thing about the rooms that we build is it's not just us. It's not just us at HT. It's Claver. It's all the people behind Claver. It's all the people at the manufacturers. And the conversation always flows deeply. And so if we ever have a challenge, if we ever have a problem, it's kind of nice to know that we don't just get fobbed off by a salesperson, but we're deeply connected to industry. And I think I see that as important as well. So.
Well, look, I think there's levels of product out there, and in the space that we exist in. And there's consumer product, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, we have the lifestyle product. You know, you've got your sort of sound bars and your little tiny speakers and little subwoofers, and that works for a lot of people, and that's great. You know,
But you're not going to experience
but you're not going to experience
everything that's on there.
you're not going to experience that on that. But even with some of the consumer brands of projectors out there, and you know, AVRs, you know, I mean, you can get AVRs pretty cheaply these days, and you can get half decent speakers that are not that expensive. You know.
True, yeah.
And you run around, and some people say, you know, well, here's a home theater cinema pack for 10 grand or something. You know, yeah, that's okay. You know, that rocks some people's boats. But I mean, the product that we are trying to deliver, and what you're trying to do here is, you know, we're taking it to literally the Hollywood level. You know, the products that are represented here are products that are used by directors and are used by the industry, the Hollywood industry. You know, movies are, you know, edited and cut on Barco projectors. Movies are shown in cinemas all around the world on Barco projectors. So now people can own a piece of that in their own home,
Which they some time ago they couldn't really do.
Oh no, you couldn't. You couldn't do. You know, that really wasn't available. So the connections sort of behind me, really go right back to
the roots, yeah.
to the roots of people building machines and equipment to make this artwork.
Our goal with every customer, seriously, you know, we work really, really hard to try to deliver something that if the producers of a film came and sat in that room, they would be proud of. Now, I think, you know, your comment was you thought that, you know, anyone could go and sit in that room and be proud of it. But we are trying to do the same for everybody. So, you know, if you know, a little bit of a plug for us, but if you are trying to deliver an exceptional experience with the highest level of art that we know, the most complex, the deeply involved and creative, with more people, you know, involved, and you know, such a coordinated effort to bring you the end result, which we can get so cheaply, you know, here, which is so rich in content, is that when we have finished your room, that you get to experience what is really in here, and that's hard to do, to be honest. But yeah, you know, that's our goal in every cinema we build. So, you know, I think, you know, what I'd like to know is, and I have to explain, Clay, we've had this room up and running for about a year now, and poor old Claver, like, he was just so involved in it, and helped us bring this together. And it's been a year because of COVID that you haven't been able to. You've got over here, so we're so happy to see you here.
Yes, thank you.
You know,
great to be back in the West.
Yeah, it's great to have you. But your final thoughts on that room?
Oh, look, the room is. I honestly, you know, I've gone around the world, you know, many times and visited a lot of showrooms, and I've sat in a lot of demo rooms and in big trade shows and everything, and I've heard some of the best speakers in the world, and I've seen some of the best images in the world, and this room here, folks, that Andrew and Enzo have built in Perth, is up there with the best of them. You know, the fact is, when you sit in that room, you don't want to leave it. You actually just want to keep watching movies all day long, and that's amazing. You've done a sensational job.
Thank you. Yeah.
And everything about it, the balance, the balance of the audio, the balance of the sound, the audio is actually there's something that physically touches you. You know, you're not just hearing things, you're feeling things. I mean, the bass actually goes through your body. You know, it's like it goes through to the back of the chair, and it's just to experience that. Yeah. Is really sensational. Yeah. And as we said with you know, you just want to sit there and watch every movie over again, because after seeing this room, you realize that, wow, I've missed out on a lot of stuff. You know, I'm not the stuff I didn't see before. Stuff I didn't hear before. Yeah, it's incredible.
No, thank you, mate.
Job well done.
So look, just bear in mind, you know, there's not many ways in the world these days that you can hold a masterpiece in your hands and own it, you know, and be able to revisit it as often as you want. You don't have to drive to the museum. You don't have to fly across the world. You don't have to navigate tons of security. this is a masterpiece, and I think we really need to appreciate that and realize it, but also understand that this is a masterpiece that varies in experience. If you watch it on a small TV with TV speakers, you're going to have a very flat experience. If you have more speakers, it's going to get better, but you can ultimately extract everything from here, but you need to know how, and that's quite a process, and it's an investment too, but it's still going to be way cheaper than buying, or buying
a Picasso.
Buying a Picasso, or having financed the actual movie yourself. So there you go.
Absolutely.
So I don't know, any other thoughts or?
No, but I think just the whole thing that at the end of the year, when the movie people get together in Hollywood and they give out the Oscars, it's actually the Academy of Motion Picture and Arts and Science.
Yes, yeah.
So not only art, which is very important, but there's a whole lot of science that goes into this, which is pretty spectacular. And as you say, everyone can have a $300 million piece of artwork. It's sitting there in their shelf for $35, and they can pull it out anytime and watch it on their private cinema.
And it's a privilege to do that, and here, I'm always struck by the detail that's in this, and the fact that over the years I've heard more and more detail. Now I'm revisiting movies because I'm getting to understand every day the art that's gone into this. So so thank you very much, Clover.
Pleasure, mate. Good to see you. Thank you.
And thank you, folks. Look, and if you have any interest in this, if you would like to build your own private cinema that meets or exceeds commercial cinema limits, please give us a call. This is an invitation-only location, but give us a call, arrange an appointment, and come in and experience what Claver's been describing with you, and we'll share a few of these masterpieces with you.
You won't regret it.
All right, folks. Bye. See you later.